Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hi everyone and welcome back to the Stress Podcast. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm super excited to welcome our next podcast guest to the show this morning, and it is David Lindsay. Hi David, how are you today?
Well, good morning, Julia. I'm fantastic, thank you. I'm so excited to be part of this podcast. So thank you very much for having me as a guest. I'm hoping that I can give the listeners some value, some stuff that they can use straight away to raise their energy, raise their vitality, and be less stressed.
Well, I'm super excited. We have already actually chatted for the last 25 minutes, but as my listeners know, we've had a huge snow winter in Lake Tahoe, and I just got a power outage. So we're doing this again, which is absolutely okay.
Practice run.
That was a great practice run. We already know now what we're going to talk about. And I'm super excited to start with 3 questions that I always ask my podcast guests at the beginning of the show, which are: what time is it where you're located? Where are you located? And what have you been up to this morning?
Yeah, so currently it's 9:30 in Sydney, Australia. 9:30 in the morning, the day before you. So it's currently, Wednesday here, 9:30 in the morning. And already I've been up since 3 o'clock because I'm normally an early riser anyway, but I get up at 3 o'clock to be at the gym by 4 o'clock. And I've already done a training session. This afternoon, I'm going to go for a run with my wife. I've dropped my daughter off at school. I've run a gym class, and just now I get to have a chat with you and just excited for the day ahead.
Wow, 3 o'clock in the morning. How many hours per night do you sleep?
At night in one chunk, I generally sleep around 6 hours, but that's not 6 hours in the whole day because as we spoke about before, I do have naps. I have an afternoon nap, whether it's around that lunchtime break, I put on headphones, I put on guided meditation just to really just allow everything to settle down, recharge, and bring me home strong. Because that's what, athletes do. And that's how they get peak performance. And it's the exact same in the work environment. You see so many people, they drag their feet when it comes to 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Whereas I still have a spring in my step because I do take that time to have that nap, to increase my performance, increase my output.
Yeah, so interesting. I was mentioning before, I actually had an athlete on the show a couple of months ago, and he said the same thing, and which is really interesting. He actually didn't have many hours of sleep consecutively during the night, but he took multiple naps during the day to stay focused and performant. And it's something that I do. I'm obviously the subject matter expert for burnout and productivity. So I do hear that a lot because I talk to a lot of specialists and experts in this field. But I don't know if you knew this, David, but I also worked for Google for 7.5 years. And obviously, Google's kind of known for having nap pods and meditation rooms. And so, they obviously started to integrate those kind of things into the workplace as well. However, I do have to say that during my 7.5 years at Google, I probably took not more than 5 naps at work. So it's definitely something I feel like people are still kind of getting more comfortable with, and they are still learning more how effective it actually is to take that nap and to take that break.
Yeah, 100%. And because it does have that stigma around it of they're lazy, and it only has to be for 20, 25 minutes, and it recharges the battery for that afternoon. It's not, if you start going into an hour and a half, with the sleep cycles, with you're coming out of it when you're at a deep sleep. Whereas we want to wake up before you hit that deep sleep, before you go into that REM cycle, because if you wake up during that cycle, that's why you're groggy. But 20, 25 minutes, you have that nice little nap, and you're ready to go. So you're refreshed and invigorated for the afternoon. to bring it home strong and really be more productive.
Yeah, totally. And so do you have to set an alarm in the morning? And like, do you feel sometimes tired when it rings at 3 o'clock? Do you keep that kind of flexible, or is it like kind of 3 o'clock every single day?
Yeah, no, I do. Well, it is because, our bodies love routines and rituals.
For
So
sure.
it's 3 o'clock. And there are times when I might go to sleep a little bit later when my alarm does go off. The majority of the time, I wake up 30 seconds before the alarm goes off. But it doesn't matter how I'm feeling. There's a great book that I read a while ago by Mel Robbins, The 5-Second Rule. And it's just about, like, I don't lay in bed. When my alarm goes off, I get up and I go. Even when I don't feel like it, it's the process of getting up and moving. I go to the gym. I may not feel like it, I may not have the energy, but I know that once I turn up to the gym, I just get started. And you have the warm-up set, and then you go, warm-up set, it starts to move everything, move the muscle, move the joints, get the blood pumping, change your mindset, and then you overcome that first obstacle, and it really gives you energy for the rest of the day.
Interesting. And I do have another question about this actually. How is your wife with you getting up so early? And does that interrupt her sleep, or does she get up as early with you as you do? Like how does that work?
Yeah, no, she doesn't get up as early as I do, but she's a good sleeper as well. Because we both put everything into our days, we both sleep really well. So I get up and I get out of the bed. I have my stuff set up from the night before, so I'm not messing around in the bedroom. I have it all set up in the lounge room, ready to go, because that's another important thing, especially when you're starting out, is get things prepared the night before. Because especially, the first month, 2 months, 3 months, you're looking for excuses. Where are my shoes? Drats, I can't find them. I'll go back to bed. Where's this? Oh, can't find them. That means it's all pointing to, I shouldn't have got up today. Now you have it prepared. So get up, get out, and get moving.
Yeah, totally can relate to that as well. David, tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you got to the point of doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, I guess it all really started. I've always been competitive because I'm not the biggest bloke going around, not by any stretch of the imagination, but I always compete. And I was saying before when it switched off that I started off playing soccer when I was like 4. My brother's 18 months older than me, so he was 6. So I had to play up with him. So I always played my junior sports a couple of years up so that we could be in the same team, so our parents weren't split. I believe this really set me up for who I am today, how I am today, and where I am now, as well as where I'm going to be. Because I don't care if you're a monster. I've dealt with monsters before. I've overcome them with tenacity, with my mindset, with just a grit and determination. And then from there, I was really good at baseball when I was younger as well. But then I started playing rugby league, football over in Australia. And I come from a little suburb in Cronulla, which is part of Sydney. But I got picked up by South Sydney Rabbitohs when I was 14 to go across and play there. This was a very pivotal moment in my life, which I believe has set me up. My stepdad goes, you can go to Cronulla, where they're then knocking at my door, offering me a contract. So you can go there. You have to do all the work. Everything's going to come back to me. The pressure's going to be on me, but I get to waltz in the team. Whereas if I go to South Sydney, I'm not guaranteed I'm even going to make the team. I have to work for my position in the team. Nothing's going to be handed to me. So I thought about it for all of 2 minutes and I went, I'm going to go the hard option. I'm going to go the route that I'm not guaranteed a position. I'm not even guaranteed I'm going to make the training squad. But I went there and I got player of the year. And then I signed with a contract with them. And that gave me momentum to keep moving forward. Unfortunately, though, I had 2 knee reconstructions playing football. And so at the ripe old age of, 20, I was out of the game. So my goal was to play professional football. But so I was a lot bigger. I was strong. And I got picked up to go into arm wrestling. And again, this is where, Steve Jobs says it brilliantly. You can't connect the dots looking forward, but looking back, it's abundantly clear that things point you in the right direction. So a bloke came up to me and goes, "Do you do arm wrestling?" And at first I thought, what's he talking about? Yeah, I do arm wrestling. And he goes, "How do you go?" And I tell him, when we're doing it for drinks, I don't buy drinks. They buy me because I keep beating them. So he handed me his card and got into arm wrestling. And I was doing really well at that. I was training probably 4 or 5 times a week with that. And I was on my way to going to some professional arm wrestling tournaments over in the States. I never even knew it as a sport, let alone you could get paid for it. And then when I was with my girlfriend, we went to a mate's wedding over in Corfu, a little island in Greece. I was there and I snapped my arm doing arm wrestling there. So that ended my around the world trip. And I'm very lucky that it was my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. She stuck with me even though I ruined the holiday. Had to come back to Sydney and get it operated on. They put a plate in my arm. Unfortunately, it hit a nerve and my arm went paralyzed. The doctors came and said, "David, like I got a nerve conduction study." They go, "David, sorry, the nerves are shriveled up and dying." And my world got taken away from me. I was an athlete. I worked in a gym. I was a personal trainer. Who's going to want a personal trainer or an athlete that can't even use their arm? And I was down in the dumps. I hit that spiral. But luckily for me, with my family, my support network, probably lasted for about 3 days. And then I snapped out of it and went, I've overcome so many obstacles along the way. What's this going to do? A broken arm, for goodness sake, that's not going to hold me back. So I tried everything. And 4 months later, I started to get a little bit of movement. That was all I needed. And everything turned around.
Wow.
From there, I had to give up football because of knee reconstructions, gave up arm wrestling because of broken arm. So I thought, if I go to chess, I'll probably fall off and break my neck. So I'll go the complete opposite way. And I started doing Kung Fu, Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling, and eventually started doing MMA and had a few MMA fights, a couple of pro boxing matches. And that was another pivotal point, was I met my wrestling coach, where he really steered me, and I'm still in contact with him to this very day. We're still very good friends, especially the wrestlers, because of the mindset that you have to have and the mindset that he showed me that I have, and really helped me extract it out on how to take it from sports and put it into the corporate world.
So cool. How long ago was that when you started to kind of pivot and see similarities between teams, like athletic teams and teams in the workplace?
Yeah, so I started speaking probably 7 or 8 years ago. So it would have been probably a couple of years before that, where it was just a throwaway conversation we had when we were on the way down to a wrestling camp. And he goes, "David, I want you to keep an eye on these boys." He goes, "Besides coach," he goes, "I'm the leader." And I go, "What are you talking about?" When I was fighting at 65, 70 kilos. These guys were 100, 110, 115 kilo monsters. But I listened to him and I watched him and I went, you know what? He's right. So if I can have this impact on guys like this, what more of an impact can I have? And with sport, you have a very, very limited lifespan. So you get kicked off when you're early to mid 30s. That's if you make it. You might be like a Brady, which can go a lot longer, but that's extremely rare. But with speaking, I can take the skills from that and I can really share it with the masses. When I'm training people or when I'm fighting, I can reach 1-to-1. In a class environment, I can reach 1 to 30, maybe 1 to 50. Speaking, I can reach 1 to thousands. So being able to have that impact and really spread my 5 steps towards improved vitality to the masses to help people. I can help more people with this than I can with fighting.
Yeah, totally. I'm really curious. One of the thoughts that I had when you were talking about kind of your upbringing and how quickly you got into competitive sports is the question around, do you feel like you had a childhood because you went so quickly kind of pro?
No, I had
No?
a very good childhood. Like,
Nice.
because I've always been competitive, but it wasn't like So when I was 15, so I was still like, I just loved training anyway. I would have done it whether I played sports or whether I didn't. I think in the first part, I was speaking about how I used to do when I was young in year one, like kindergarten year one. I used to do push-ups, squats, sit-ups, because I just love the feeling of the burn through my body, being able to push and maxing out at this time. And then a week later, being able to do 1, 2, 3 more. And that was at that age. And I begged my parents for a weight set when I was in year one. So I was 7 years old. They didn't give it to me for about 18 months after that. I got it for Christmas and I was the most excited kid because I had this tiny little weight set. And, you know, that's just how I am. That's a childhood that I have and I love it. So I never say, no, I was too brought up in sports. I wouldn't have it any other way. Like now I do a lot of reading and that's where some people go, well, do you wish you had have done that when you were younger? And again, I might have wished that I did a little bit more reading, but I don't regret anything that I've done because as I said, every step has led me to where I am today and leading to the greatness. So I had a great childhood. My parents split up when I was younger. That happens to a lot of people. So then, you know, that's just life. But yeah, I've been competitive. It doesn't matter whether it's chess, whether it's dominoes. I'm competitive and I love it. Some people do go, David, you're too competitive. I go, really? In what world is that a bad thing? Yes, I snap my arm because I'm competitive. Yes, I've got injuries because I'm competitive. But my grandpa, who was a wrestler as well when he was younger, goes, David, would you rather have these experiences or would you rather wrap yourself up in bubble wrap? Would you rather not have these things? And go, yeah, because he had these great stories about when he was wrestling around the Australian countryside. He had these great stories from sports. And he goes, if you want to keep yourself safe, go to jail. You get 3 meals a day, you get a bed, you can stay in your cell, but there's no growth in that. So you have to have these experiences which come about through sports, which come about through all of that. And that really makes a person who you are.
Yeah.
So no regrets. Sorry, that was a long answer to a short.
I love that. No, totally. I love that. You know, you saw I'm also super interested in sports and I studied sports psychology during my time actually when I lived in Dublin. And I was always really fascinated by the journeys of athletes. And I actually, you know, my kind of final paper was written about Andre Agassi. I read his biography, and I just found it so interesting. And you know, you were mentioning earlier as well, like all of the different documentaries that you've watched and that you love, kind of getting into those kind of things. And I'm the same way. I love it, and I feel like there are so many parallels, and I'm so fascinated by the mindset of athletes. And you know, Andre Agassi, he started playing tennis, I think, when he was 3 or 4 years old, and he was one of multiple children, and his dad kind of pushed all of them, tried all of them to become tennis, you know, pros, but only he kind of had that grit and had the
and also you know, maybe the passion as well. It has the passion,
to be. The passion. But Andre Agassi hated tennis.
Yeah,
he did.
I didn't know that.
It's super interesting. Highly recommend reading that autobiography. He wrote it himself.
Because, like you said, I love learning. Same thing from athletes, from also military people as well. Because there's a book that I just finished reading that I've got here, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And I've got a book by Hal Moore. It's about leadership and the lessons that they learned through war. Because in business, yes, it's okay, you might lose $1 million, you might lose $10 million, you might even have to shut down your business. In war, you're losing lives. So and there's such a parallel from sports to business, war to business. And so learning from all these different angles as well. You know, I don't think you can just really pigeonhole, even though, and I've got another book here, The One Thing, because that's what, like, I believe as well is like learning from sports, from the Navy, from military. But for me, it all comes back to raising vitality. It all comes back to bringing that teamwork together. So it's being exceptionally good at that one thing. And for me, that's speaking now.
So cool. So tell us a little bit more about what you speak about when you go into corporations.
Yeah, so I speak about raising vitality. So about bringing the team together. Because if you raise vitality, you raise vim, vigor, passion. You really bring the team together. You raise morale, productivity, and therefore profitability within the business. And for me as well, when it comes to teamwork, there's research that shows that people, and we also know anecdotally through our own lives, that we're willing to do more for people that we care about, that we know, like, and trust, than we are for ourselves. And they're going to do the same for us. So if you have a tight-knit team, you're going to get more done. You're going to have more fun while they're doing it. They're probably even going to spend more time at work, not even getting paid, because they just enjoy the environment. And that's what it's about. So it's, my 5 steps towards improved vitality. That's what it's all about, especially what we've been through the last 2.5, 3 years. People are walking around going, looking over their shoulder. What's coming next? What's coming next? And if you're constantly looking over your shoulder, you're not looking at what's ahead. So when you have that energy, you're there, you can do it. And as opposed to being worried about that, you're going to bump into things.
Yeah, totally. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about those 5 steps, because I'm really curious to hear more about what they actually are about. So what is step number 1 to increase vitality on teams?
Is snap. And people go, what's that? So it's creating routines and rituals to snap into action. So like I showed you before when we got cut off, I've got music going on in there, because music is a great mood ultra. It can really help pump you up if you're feeling a bit flat, or if you're over anxious, it can help calm you down. So creating those routines and rituals. I use music because it's the same as with fighting. When I come out to the cage or you come out to the ring, fighters have music and you feel them going to it, because you can't afford to waste 5 or 10 seconds before you snap into action with a fight, because there's someone where their fists are flying at you. And if you're that little, you take that time to snap into action, you're going to get punched. No one likes to get punched in the face, no matter how tough you are. So it's lining things up. And in sports, as in business, we have different positions requiring different skill sets and different mindsets. So you need to create different routines and rituals that are suitable to you, to what's required at your position. Because, the accountant, they've got a completely different skill set that's required to the people that are front of house or to people that are running a gym. Because if you have the energy that I have in accounts, it can be distracting. So I have to modify stuff. When I go down to the accounts department, I still raise them up a little bit, but they've got their own unique skill sets. They've got their routines and rituals so they can concentrate on the task at hand. And the power pose, like just, taking up space as opposed to really trying to shy away. Because there's research that shows that holding a power pose for as little as 2 minutes raises your testosterone, lowering your cortisol. So it gets you into alpha mindset. It gets you ready to go. So if you combine those two alone, like whether it's on a bus, whether it's on a train, whether it's walking from the train station to work, from the car park to work, headphones on, something that can help you get excited. You walk with power, passion, and purpose. You're going to be ready to snap into action. And the good thing with this as well, you have to be aware that stuff like this can work both for you, but it can also work against you. So if you're that positive person coming in day after day, people are going to feel it. And then you're going to get 1 on board, 2 on board, 4 on board. And then before you know it, it's going to hit that tipping point and everyone's going to be coming in and they're going to be buzzing. And because of the power of music, because of the power of posture, because of the energy that you exude, that's working for you. But you get 1 negative person, 2 negative people, 4 negative people. And then before you know it, it's a toxic culture. So that's just some awareness that you have to be aware of, that it can work for you or it can work against you. Get it working for you. Utilize systems and strategies to really help you snap into action.
Yeah.
Because as I said, I love using sporting teams. Sorry, I just get carried away. But using the All Blacks, they're the most successful international sporting team in history. They come from this tiny little island. What routine and ritual do they have before each and every match? The haka.
They're doing the haka.
Yeah. So that changes their physiology, their psychology, and their spirit, their energy. So you can utilize that. And what I'll do for the people on YouTube, you're going to see it. For the people on the podcast, you can hear it, you can imagine it, you can do it. So I get people to stand up, stand nice and tall, jump around, get the energy going first, because it's no good if you're sitting down, stand up and think you can do it. No, because you can still be standing like that. Stand tall, jump around. Then you do something physical, which you're either going to slap your thighs or slap your chest. You're going to do something verbal. It just becomes a primal, ah! And that will change you at a mental state. So we're changing physiology, psychology, and then emotional as well. So you go, as a team, you might be there, bah, 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 da, 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 have some music going, and then 1, 2, 3, bah, yes! And then, boom, you high five. That just gives you so much energy. Whether, like we spoke about it before, if you're part of a sales team, you're going to get no's. You're going to get no's. You're going to get no's. But if you have that energy, you have that passion, you have the power behind you, you get a no. You get a no. It doesn't bother you. It doesn't cut you. Like as if you're going with a weak state and someone says no to you and you get all worried. You start taking it personal. What if they don't like me? They don't know who you are. But every no that you're getting closer towards a yes, closer towards something that can change your life and your family's life. As simple as doing yes, a power move can really set you up with that mindset.
I love that. And, I find that really interesting as well, the reflection around what kind of routines do you actually do in the morning that set you up for success based on your role in the company as well, right? Because there are people, like you said, there are accountants, there are people in the sales, there are people in whatever marketing, right? And they have different tasks throughout the day and throughout the month and throughout the year as well. I was thinking about that as you were talking about it too, as an entrepreneur, right? I'm wearing so many different hats, and sometimes I work on projects, and sometimes I do business development, and sometimes I do marketing, and actually even adapting my routines to those tasks that I have to perform for those particular days, I feel like can be super helpful, because sometimes I have to be super focused and I have to be kind of calm. And sometimes I do actually kind of need the hype a little bit more, right? In order to sell right, I facilitate trainings and workshops as well virtually. So I have to entertain sometimes 30, 40, 50 people virtually. And of course, that energy carries, like just watching you and just listening to you, that energy totally carries even just through the internet and through, through the Zoom conference call.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, because like for me as well, it's people talk to me, they go, David, how are you so excited? How are you so this? And I go, because it's really part of my DNA. I'm not putting this on. I couldn't put it on because, I know in Australia and, different places around the world, we have, I swear, the great bullshit meters. We can tell if someone's fraudulent. We can tell if someone's not being the real them. So this is really who I am. But as you said, as a speaker, as an entrepreneur, you have so many different caps. And when we came back, I said, look, I've got the Jacksons on. So utilizing music, because I get stuff up that gets me going, especially before I go and do an event on stage, because when you're talking to 300, 400, 500 people, the energy needs to be so much bigger. Whereas opposed to if you have to really concentrate, I might put on some music that's going to calm me down, because naturally I can be a little bit in your face. And it's about awareness as well. I'm aware how I naturally am, but I'm also very much aware of how much I need to be when I go into that space. When I go into the accountant space, I'm still high energy, but I tone it down a little bit. So it becomes that awareness. Like I don't walk into accountants and go, yes, because they jump up and it'll ruin their concentration. Like a lot of times when I see when I see people that are doing their work, I don't say hello to them, because you think about how many times, like if you're a CEO, COO, CFO, how many times people say hello to you, and it's simple: look up, hello, look down. You don't hit the ground running where you were. You have to backtrack, and then you go again before you get into that flow state. So it's about awareness as well. Like I said, you have to have awareness for your position. You have to have awareness for the skill set and the mindset that is required to play that position exceptionally well. And as you said, if you have to play multiple positions, you have to be aware, okay, how am I going to change from here to here? And I like using the doors because it's a frame. So that's where I like to touch the edges of the doors, and then you can use that as a reminder. I'm in accounts now. Boom, I'm on the stage now. Boom, I'm at the gym now. Boom, I'm at marketing. So, it's all that sort of, you need to have those different hats. You need to be aware, but it's not changing who I am. It's merely just moving things up, moving things
Adapting.
down.
Yeah, so interesting. Cool. All right. So step number 1 is building these routines and habits and to kind of snap into action. What is the second one?
The second one is nap. It's because we're not designed to work 24/7, 365. You've seen, I've already shown it a few times. We all have our mobile phones within arm's reach. So we're accessible, and you're a burnout specialist. People are wondering why we're burning out. And that goes along with this book, Sleep. So it's about, and we spoke before about how I have naps, napping for peak performance, sleeping for peak performance. But also when I say nap as well, it does mean sleep, creating routines and rituals at night to go to sleep properly. Most people, the room is too warm. We want to have it, like I talk in Celsius, I'm not sure what it is Fahrenheit, but around 18, 19 degrees Celsius. So which is a lot cooler than people have it. And we also want a blackout room. But people, they wonder why they toss and turn, because they've had alcohol. They've had all these different, they might have gone to bed straight after they've had dinner. So their body's digesting, so they're not getting a proper sleep. But also along with that, like it's at work. As I said before, I put my headphones on, I put a guided meditation on for between 20, 25 minutes. There's one that I really enjoy, which is 24 minutes. And I also set an alarm, because you want to go just in that first phase. You don't want to go into the REM phase, because if you get into the REM phase of rest, that's where you wake up and you're groggy. We don't want that. We want to refuel and recharge and then come back for the afternoon. And with nap as well, I talk about things like having a lunch break, getting outside, getting some fresh air, constantly rehydrating, because really as a society, we're chronically dehydrated. And something as simple as having more hydration helps your mind function and your body function so much better. But I also speak about things like rock climbing, boxing, martial arts, surfing, and extreme sports as naps. And people look at me funny, go, David, do you know how physically demanding they are? Like, of course I do. I do rock climbing. I do martial arts. I do fighting. I don't do surfing. But with those things, it's your single focus. It's one of the few places where you're in the here and now. You're in the moment. So you're on the rock face. You're concentrating about the next hold. You're not concentrating about what's going on at work. So you're in the here and now. But your subconscious is working a million miles an hour because you've freed it up, because you're in the here and now. And no matter how tough you are, as I said before, no one likes getting punched in the face. So you're in the here and now. Same as with surfing and extreme sports. And it's amazing how many mathematicians and scientists doing research for this are avid rock climbers, and how often they have that epiphany once they've reached that summit, because their subconscious has figured out those issues, because they're truly in the moment.
Yeah, totally. And there's also obviously something to say about how, just relaxing that stress response, that current stress response that's going on in the back of your mind, and then basically taking a break to help your brain be creative again, because it's your prefrontal cortex, right? That's
Very
constantly doing all of the different actions and tasks and responsibilities throughout the day, and it can't function 24/7. So we need to relax that in order to stay creative and stay productive and stay focused. I find it really interesting because I worked for Google for 7.5 years, and they actually do have things like nap pods and meditation rooms, and obviously different workout classes on the campus as well. And I did actually work out a lot on campus, but I think in the course of those 7.5 years, the only times I used meditation and nap rooms was probably in the last 6 months, when I was already burnt out, and I knew that that's actually helpful. That's kind of when I started that awareness of, this is actually helping me to be more performant and show up as my best self. But there's still a lot of stigma around that, right? Like I assume the companies that you train and talk to, do they already have things like that in place?
The majority of them don't, because as you said, there's that stigma that if you have that 25-minute time to yourself, that 25-minute nap, oh, they're a bludger, or they're this, or they're that. But you have to be able to step back and look at it from a distance. That you're so much more productive if you do have that 25 minutes. You're so much more productive. You're happier. And as you said, it really opens the gateway to getting these ideas where, if you're constantly thinking about all this other stuff, you don't allow your mind to relax, to come up with fantastic ideas. So it's really important in, as you say, preventing burnout, in getting ideas, in just being more productive. And because I've done this talk quite a few times, early on especially, I had bosses come up to me and go, David, I really enjoyed it. I just can't afford to take a nap. And I went, you know what, that's fine. We all have choices. And then by the time about the third person came, I went and I did some research, and so I've added this into the talk as well, where you can have a nap planned, whether it's a long weekend, whether it's having your lunch break, you close your door, you don't allow anyone in, and you just have that time. Or you can have a nap where it's not planned, where it's due to stress, due to burnout, due to heart attack, due to illnesses that could have been prevented by having simple naps. And I talk about Sir Winston Churchill and JFK. Those world leaders, along with many others, are avid nappers because they see the benefit of it. So if these guys are world leaders, and yet you can't have a nap with your business to increase your productivity, maybe, sometimes you have to turn the mirror on yourself as well.
Yeah, I always think you need to experience it and experiment with it. I also, if someone would have told me this 4.5 years ago, I would have also been like, nah, I don't know. I don't have the time. I don't have the time, right? I don't have the time to do this. I'm in meetings all day. And I feel like now, one of the benefits of the pandemic is that we are more working from home, and that we have more of that flexibility of having the kind of the bed right behind you, right here in my and this is the guest bedroom. But it's I've integrated it a lot more, and I have phases as well, right? I have had phases in my business where I would take a nap every single day, because that was just the time of my life where I did really require that in order to be focused. And at the moment, I feel energized enough, and I get my energy from other routines.
From doing stuff from this.
Yeah, but it always changes as well. And I think that's okay as well. But you'll never know. I feel like what you're kind of missing out on if you're not trying it out. And and I find it super helpful. And I do know now that if I do actually hit that ceiling and I feel super tired, I actually do know I'm going to lay down for 25 minutes. I have this incredible meditation, and I know that after those 25 minutes, I'm good to go again. So yeah.
I love it. Yeah, and how energized you are after like only 25 minutes. Because you see so many people, especially like, with this podcast, I'm standing up. I just like to move around. I'm very active. But you see people that are sitting at their cubicles all day. They sit there for 8, 10, 12 hours, and they don't get out of this position, and they wonder why they're sore. They wonder why they're sorry. They wonder why they're so tired at the end of the day. But taking that time to stretch out, to, as I said, rehydrate, to have a lunch break, get out, stretch, and even potentially, have that sleep for 20, 25 minutes. As you said, you try it. And there's phases in life, like in sports. You don't go 1,000% from the start. You build up. And then you want to build up so that you hit the peak when you're at the finals. You don't want to peak halfway through the season and then drop off. It's that constant building and then down and then up. Those phases in life, phases in business.
Totally. What's step number 3?
Is tap. So many people think of tapping, because I bought all of these from fighting as well. Like when I was fighting, I might get caught in an armbar and they want to either hyperextend my elbow or break your arm. So you tap. Same as if you have a choke on, you tap. So what it is, you don't tap straight away, you fight. You fight against it, but there's a certain point where if you don't tap, you're going to get a severe injury, probably break your arm. You're passing out isn't that bad. But what you do, you go back to your coaches and you find out, how did they get me in that armbar? How can I prevent it next time? And then little bit, day by day by day, you're going to get 1% better. And then eventually you're going to be able to escape it. You can even use that as a trap. Many, many businesses see the importance of tapping and evolving, equally as many do not. Just a few examples that I use of companies that were dominating the world that stopped tapping and evolving. Nokia, they had over 40% of the entire mobile phone industry after the introduction of the smartphones. And I'm also showing my age now. I'm a very old man. But Nokia phones in the early 2000s stopped tapping and evolving because they had their Symbian system, didn't want to go to the Android. And now they've tried a couple of times to get back in, but they're not a player. We have Kodak film, where their money was in film. Even though they had the patent to the first digital camera, they didn't do that. And I know in Australia, there used to be Kodak stores on just about in every town, in every shopping center, and you take the roll of film in, and it was so exciting. You get it back an hour later, you go through it. You wouldn't know what half the photos were, but it was exciting to go through that anyway. And the ones that you got were gold. Again, they stopped tapping and evolving. They're now florist news agents. They're not Kodak stores. And we also have Toys R Us and Blockbuster. You know, Blockbuster got approached by Netflix to buy them out, because at that time Netflix was a mail order DVD company, and they needed money to go online. But Blockbuster didn't see any benefit in that, and they laughed them out of the boardroom. As of, I think it was 2022, there was one Blockbuster left. There was keeping it exactly how it was in the 90s, because they want that nostalgic feel. But I'm not even sure if it's still there. I haven't looked in the last couple of months, but as of last year, it was still there, just playing off that nostalgic feel. While Netflix, they created a whole new industry because Blockbuster didn't tap and evolve. And a few companies that are constantly tapping and evolving is you have Meta. So they've evolved just from Facebook to Meta with all these other things. Tesla has evolved, and also bring it right back to the mighty M, McDonald's. They're constantly tapping and evolving. But every time you evolve, you're not always going to be successful. You're going to have failures along the way. You're going to have things that just don't work. Because I talk about McPizza, McHotdog, McSpaghetti, things like that. McFettuccine,
McBaguette in France. I
What
said McBaguette in France.
Oh, yeah, because I do
that?
talk about that. In Australia, there was McOz. I loved it because it had beetroot, tomato, lettuce, all the good stuff. And I didn't know that there was McBaguette, but I know that in Africa, there was a McAfrica where they had it with flatbread. And it's an epic fail. McDonald's is constantly trying things. They're failing. You fail fast, you fail forward. You tap and evolve. Every failure, there's a learning point in it. So what can you learn? And especially with what we've been through the last, 2-3 years, now's a perfect time to try things, to be an innovator or an early adapter. like when, and then knowing when it's a point to jump off, to tap and evolve, because nothing flies 100% all the time. So there's an apex and there's a time to jump off and reinvent yourself. And you're constantly jumping off, reinventing yourself, jump off, and then knowing when to jump off if it's a complete failure.
Yeah.
And it's that's what tapping is. So not being scared of failure, using it to learn, grow, and evolve.
This is so interesting. And, I'm kind of thinking, I know that you have 5 steps in this vitality process, but I kind of feel like we've given people a little bit of a taste and a teaser of what you're doing and how you're talking about things, because I find it super, super interesting. And it's a different approach. There's obviously some similarities because there are some things that are just so important for performance, but you have a very unique lens on things, which I think is so cool and
Thank
so
you.
beautiful.
Thank you.
And I'm actually kind of curious. So we're going to pause here, right? If people are interested to learn the other 2 steps in this process of how to build vitality on teams, how can they best learn more about you?
Yeah, so the best way would be I'm most active on LinkedIn. Find me on there.
Okay.
It's David Lindsay, Lindsay. And I'm in there. I'm throwing a pink soccer ball, sort of to stand out a little bit. And also what I'm looking at doing is I'm looking at getting a speaking tour going over in the States. So
Amazing.
if you're interested in getting your listeners to the company or know that someone that may be interested, you can hit me up on LinkedIn or hit me up through email, which is david@davidlindsay.com.au. And I think I'm going over there in October this year to speak at an event, if we can organize something there, or even next year, or you're just interested in finding out more about me. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help. I'm a helper.
Awesome. And I do have another question for you. I'm
Yeah.
curious. So you obviously speak a lot about these things. You motivate teams to think about these things differently. I'm sure this question comes kind of often as well, but how do you start implementing these things? If
Yeah.
we
And
think about these first 3 things, right? The routines, the sleep, and also the tapping and evolving.
Yeah. So what it is like, really, it's about writing stuff down, because there are all these great ideas, and there's so many great ideas out there, but if you don't implement them, because we also do have a 3 pillars of high performance online course that we do sell to companies as well. But one of that, the 3 steps are creating your own unique roadmap, the 5 steps towards improved vitality, and following the footpath. But along with that, there's building your confidence and execution. It's all pointless if you don't have that execution, because you can have all of this stuff there. So start off writing it down. Write down what routine and ritual you're going to use. I'm going to get up at this time. I'm going to have this set up the night before. I'm going to do this, and tick it off. Because, there's also studies that show that when we tick stuff off, we get that little feel good because it's an accomplishment. So you write it down, you tick it off. You do the same thing day after day after day, so it becomes a habit. That's the same as with training, with lifting weights, with working. You make things so that they become habitual. And then once you do that, it happens anyway. What songs work for you? Create a playlist that can help pump you up. Like I said, it's about not just pumping you up, because you can be overstimulated. What can you also listen to calm you down as well? So yeah, write that list. And with the companies, what we do as well is every month following up is I send an email through where they can, with a video, because both video and written, I believe as a speaker, I can hit more people by video than with typing. People don't have time to read, but they have time to watch and listen. And I remind them about the steps as they go along. So each month they get one on Snap. They get one the next month on Nap, the next one on Tap, just to refresh it. Because, it's that constant repetition is what really gets it in here, then gets it into your DNA.
Yeah. Yeah, so interesting. Very cool. I hope that you're going to come in October this year and let me know if you're anywhere close in California, and maybe we can
Okay.
link up and get to connect. It was such a
Sure.
pleasure to talk to you today, David. Thank you so much for all of the interesting insights, and I'm kind of excited to kind of keep people a little bit curious about these other two
Yeah.
steps. I'm kind of curious, so I'm going to ask them after we stop the recording. But yeah, I think this is really
I've had a
interesting.
lot of fun, Julia. Thank you.
Yeah. And for those of you that just listened to this podcast today and you feel like, wow, this was so inspirational and so interesting, make sure that you share this episode with somebody that you just thought of that might really benefit from the information that we shared today, because that helps us to spread the word. It helps David to get more known. It helps me to obviously spread the word more. And so thank you so much in advance already for doing that. And I really do hope to see you and hear you in the next podcast. Again, David, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for recording this podcast twice.
I've loved it.
I hope
It's been
that
a lot
we'll
of
talk
fun.
again in the future. Thank you so much.